You're listening to Truth, Freedom, and Sophia on the Wake Up Radio. This is your host, Sophia. Shout out to super producer Cindy Ashby for putting this all together. You can catch all of our live shows on Google and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and check out our new streaming site on OTWTube. Check out our new streaming site, OTWTube.com, where we upload all of our uncensored videos, all of our content. You can create your own profile, start your subscription today for free, and check out all of those videos and content from all of our other hosts, and check out again all of our radio shows on thewakeupradio.com. This is Truth, Freedom, and Sophia. Welcome with everyone tonight. Welcome. Sorry, I'm a little tongue twisted because I got so many things going on in my head. But tonight I want to talk about something really, really important to me. And I finally have kind of figured out a way to really explain how Hollywood really does use black magic against us and where it stems from. What is the history of this? You know, what magic are they using? Where does it come from? And I got to say, before I get into this, I'm going to be using this as my reference tonight. This is a special edition of Weird Stuff magazine, and it's just so well put together that I thought, you know what, I'm just going to use it and do a whole show around it. So shout out to, her name's Jamie, who wrote this. I'm sorry, let me look it up. Yeah, Jamie Hanshaw in Freeman Fly. She was written by Jamie Hanshaw, great researcher. So thank you for providing us with this amazing content. But before I get into this, I just want to start by saying happy 4th of July to everyone. This year is kind of like weird for me. You know, last year I was really invested politically for some reason, not for some reason, but for a real reason. The world is in turmoil, and I'm trying, just like everyone else, to figure out how to do my part in it and figure out what areas need my attention and go from there. But, you know, this year I'm kind of feeling a little somber about 4th of July, and it's not in a negative way. It's just the state of the world and the state of America. What is America right now? That's what's kind of bothering me, is what is America right now? Is America this, you know, country of, you know, just debauchery and fakery and, you know, bullying and all of these awful things that we know exist? Or is America really this country founded on ideals of freedom and, you know, every man is imbued by God with divine rights and all of that? And I believe it's both. And this is why it's a hard time for me right now, because what do we focus on, right? Do we focus on eradicating the negative and all the bad and exposing all the bad? Or do we focus on building the good on the good? You know, what do we do first? And I think that's a really hard situation right now. I personally have no faith in politics right now. I'm just being quite honest. To me, I'm in this weird kind of phase where I've just stepped out of everything. I'm not in the bubble. And I look around, and everything I look at just is a veneer. It looks like a veneer to me. And that doesn't mean I don't connect with things or that I'm judging them. I just see a veneer. And it makes me wonder, you know, what is really the end game here for all of these people? You know, what is really going on, and what does everybody really want? You know, sometimes I feel like everybody's trapped in this game where, you know, we're all playing a role. We're all playing the role we think we're meant to play in life, and we're not being who we're meant to be. We're playing the role we think we're meant to play. The role that we tell ourselves fits us best is the role we play in life best. And part of it is true, but part of it we have to drop the veneer. We have to start getting real. You know, interactions are really hard, and they started getting really hard for me when I step back and I think about, where I'm at and the things I've been through in life, and you just reflect on life. If you're one of those people, I reflect every day on something. And I was reflecting a lot on my whole life journey recently, and where I stopped really connecting with people and really started shutting down, where I started really going into my shell and isolating and becoming a weird loner. And I say a weird loner because I did have a switch in my personality. I went from being, really social to being totally isolating, also totally isolated. And I know and I recognize now what happened. You know, my whole life, I have had really, really strong gifts. I hid them from people. I never said anything. And I always picked up strong vibes from all around me all the time. Ugly vibes. Do you know what it's like to know and be the person who truly knows, and no one knows that you know, and you can't tell anyone you know, because if you tell people you know, then you're never going to be, you're never going to have connections with anybody in life if people truly know that you know. And I'm serious when I say that. It might not make sense to some people, but the people who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. And I went through that. And as a kid, I was isolated. See, this is what reflecting does for you. It opens you up and it teaches you so many amazing things. As a kid, I was isolated, didn't have friends. I mean, as a young kid to at least age 12, 13, I isolated myself, and that was where I was happiest because I was spiritually connected and I was surrounded by people who weren't. And I was, living in a world that didn't value that. And I, for some reason, very young, was immersed in it, was surrounded by it. It was my strongest connection. So being a young child, knowing that no one around you has this connection or this thing, with them that makes them see a deeper layer to things, and being so young and being so deep, it was heavy. So I isolated, and that's how I was comfortable and that's how I was happy, because interacting with people made me unhappy. It made me uncomfortable. And that was me being a young child with a lot of heavy emotional people around me, a lot of heavy burdens around me, a lot of, heavy things happening around me. My dad died when I was 4. My mom had 4 young children. It's just a lot of things going on. So, anyways, reflecting on all that, I see where when I became kind of like a teenager, I stopped I stopped valuing that, and I started valuing more of a social life, of that surface stuff, the veneer, the image. You want connection. So if you want connections, you realize sometimes you're gonna have to tone it down. You're gonna have to set a certain side of you. This is in my experience, not in everyone else's. You're gonna have to set that certain part of you aside in order to feel on everyone else's wavelength. And that is not me saying I was above here, up here, and people were down here. And that's not how I mean it. It just means when you're operating and oscillating in both frequencies, in both worlds, and no one else is, that other world is constantly chattering, talking to you, pulling you in. And it's hard to actually truly be present with others without bringing that weird world to them, and then they don't understand it, so you're not going to explain that, so you just start to tune it out. You start to just shut it down. And that's what I did from probably age 14 until like 21. And that was when I was the most probably out of my mind, most chaotic, most wild. But you have to go through those kinds of phases. You have to go through those phases because you have to have something to contrast. You have to be able to, at some point of your life, say, who am I? Am I this shell of a person, of the life that I've been living? Am I the deep child that wanted to be isolated and loved being connected to the spirit realm? What am I? And I'm going to tell you this. Went through that phase. I go through that probably every so many years, where I do this deep reflecting, and I come out of a new shedding of the skin, and I know a deeper layer of myself. But I'm going to tell you this: most people aren't living like that. Most people don't get to even go through this process. They don't get to go through a process of spiritual awakening, renewal, rebirth, reflection, because it's robbed from them. Because everything presented to us nowadays in this day and age, in this time and space, is presented to us with an agenda behind it, with a goal, with an aim. And it's usually to harness something from you or to get you to spend your money or to give you something valuable from yourself to that thing. And none of it is ever good for you. And where does this stem from? I'm going to get into it now because it does. Hollywood is the magic arm. It is the magic wand. And this world is run by Black magicians, especially America. This world used to be amazing. It used to be magical. It used to be mystical, and people had respect for it. People, the human beings at one point who were true humans, we lived here in symbiotic relationship with nature, with each other. We utilized magic in the way that was respectful, that was for the benevolence of everything, even nature, because nature is alive. Nature is collecting data on all of us at all times, just like everything is. Everything is alive all around us. And if they just told us something like that when we were young, boy, how open our minds would just be to amazing things that are really happening in our world. But anyways, I don't want to get too off track, and I do that a lot. So I'm going to get to it. So I'm going to start reading from this because it's information that has to be known. We all talk about Hollywood, mind-controlled Hollywood, psyop Hollywood, and really it's all just paratroopers repeating something they heard from someone else. And no one ever presents the real goods, the real research. Well, I always do because I actually read and research, always have, always will. I will never take someone's word for anything, and I will never take just one book's word for anything. I will read multiple books on one subject, and even if it's an opposite perception of what I really would want, just to get a well-rounded discernment of truth going on. So anyways, then that's not to down anyone else. It's just to say there's a lot of fakeness just always. And even people who are real sometimes are very fake, if you know what I mean. The origins of drama. Hollywood is an empire of its own and includes all the elements of initiates. Initiates is, and they do put us through this initiation process. The mystery schools of ancient times, which were, again, they were a ripoff. This is where I was leading to, and I cut myself off because I got sidetracked. When we used to live as true humans on this earth, and we lived with respect for nature, ourselves, our bodies, each other, we utilized magic in a way that was, benevolence for everyone and was in harmony with nature. Something happened and an outside force came in and started to literally drain the true human of its life force, of its connection. And now there's, thousands and thousands of years down the road, 26,000 years down the road, we are now at this degraded state of magic where it is a total inversion of the true the true human, of the way that the true harmony works. And it stems from Babylon. And so now I'll really get into it. Sorry about that. Hollywood is an empire of its own and includes all the elements of initiates, hierophants, and holy sites. It is a metropolis of occult symbolism, but the rites of Hollywood are not of any mainstream denomination. They are a composite of ancient religions called the mysteries. In all cities of the past, there were temples for public worship and offering. In every community, there were also mystics, deeply versed in nature's lore. These priests banded together, forming exclusive tools of philosophy and religion. The more important of these groups were known as the mysteries, who performed sacred dramas at stated periods. The most famous characters of antiquity were initiated into these secret societies by strange and mysterious rites, some of which were extremely cruel. Many of the ancient schools chose mystery plays as a path of initiation. There were varying degrees and many levels of priesthoods, as most magical orders have hierarchies. Priests were born into families of priests or priestesses and assumed the destiny of the family bloodline when their predecessors died. Secrets were told within the family about the mystery teachings and the rites of passage and initiation. Outsiders were only permitted to join after a long course of study, fasting, ritual, and a lifetime of dedication. The earliest gods were invoked by ritual act, dromenon, the thing done, such as a sacrificial dance, commemorating the fact that our life begins and ends when they call upon us. Subsequently, the thing was said, legomenon, as well as done, and the dremenon was on its way to becoming the drama. Once speech within the temple precincts had been endowed with the power of word magic, we have the invocation, properly so called. Initiation, in many cases, was a theatrical performance where the mysteries of the universe were revealed to the initiate, and he himself played a role in the third or sublime degree of Freemasonry. For example, the candidate plays the part of Grand Master Hiram Abiff, the original rock star of the order. The ceremonies are conducted with solemn exactness, with each member being thoroughly drilled and rehearsed so they can correctly perform their parts in the drama. The ritual is based on the assassination of Hiram of Tyre, who was a craftsman of King Solomon's. So they describe this Freemason theatrical ritual that is part of the Freemason initiation that they do, as one of the degrees. And it goes on and describes that, the Freemasonry links. And I don't want to get too much into to read. So I'm going to skip through to really, to the parts that I believe are the most important. So, in the golden age of Hollywood, from late 1920s to late mid-1940s, the film industry operated under the studio system. This means that certain companies control practically the entire process of filmmaking, from production to distribution and exhibition. Although many Jewish people were instrumental in the creation of Hollywood, it's a fact that some of the first and largest movie studios were created by Masons. The most powerful Hollywood moguls, Jack Warner of Warner Brothers, Darryl Zanuck of 20th Century Fox, Louis B. Mayer of Metro Goldwyn Mayer, MGM, Adolph Zukor of Paramount Pictures, and Carl Laemmle of Universal Studios were all Masons. Some of the biggest names in show business were also Masons, including John Wayne, W.C. Fields, Oliver Hardy, Bud Abbott, Gene Autry, Irving Berlin, Nat Cole, King Cole, Duke Ellington, Douglas Fairbanks, and Clark Gable. The importance of Freemasonry in Hollywood is reflected in the fact that the Academy Awards used to be held at the Shrine Auditorium, which is owned and operated by a Scottish Friends. The Hollywood Masonic Temple, now known as the El Capitan Theater, was bought by Walt Disney Company in 1998. The inscription on the top of the building reads, quote, "Freemasonry built its temples among the nations and in the hearts of men." In 2002, after extensive renovation, Disney reopened the building as the El Capitan Entertainment Center. Disney restored original fixtures including backlit stone filigree, wrought iron torturies, batch elder tiles, and old post boxes once used by Masonic officers. Since 2008, the building's theater has been home to ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live. Many of the rituals of Freemasonry are based on the trials candidates were subjected to by ancient hierophants. It is believed that Hiram Abiff was an initiate of the Dionysic architects, builders who erected many monuments of antiquity. Dionysus was the god of wine, fertility, and theater, among other things. He was called the god that comes with religion, ecstasy, and epiphany, and his festivals were the driving force behind the development of Greek theater. The Dionysian mysteries used drugs and other trance-inducing techniques such as dance and music to remove inhibitions and social constraints for the purpose of returning the individual to an animalistic state. And I gotta say, dance and theater is also used for the mysteries of heaven as well. So I must say that. These are, again, that's why I opened with saying that these are all an inversion of the truth, of the true way that God intended us to, connect and to grow. The mysteries of Osiris in Egypt parallel the Dionysian cult, as they were both dying gods, much like Hiram Abiff, who was from Phoenicia, where Dionysus originated. So then that goes on. And now I'm going to go into now the Dionysian mysteries. Like many other mystery schools, consisted of two sets of rites: the secret rites of initiation and the public rites, or Dionysia. For Greece and Rome, the stage was sacred, where the dramaturgical interactions of the gods were actually a form of magical invocation. The actors donned the costumes of the gods, with the playwright scripting the narrative to indoctrinate the masses into the appropriate morals of the state. So it was in the beginning of theater. There were two kinds of people, the initiates and the profane. In other words, there are those that get it and those who don't. In the world of Harry Potter, this would be the magicians and the muggles. Every pagan nation had not only in-state religion, but another into which only the elect, known as the illuminated ones, gained entrance. Since the initiates thought themselves to be philosophically and morally superior, they believed that the masses must be led like a flock of sheep and taught what to think in simple language. Now, here's where I need to interject. This is true, right? There are people who are meant for higher things in society because they have a higher mind, a higher perception. But here's where they take it and they use it for evil. We're not meant to say, oh, because I have a higher mind or because I know the deeper things of reality or the deeper things of life, I am now going to use that against you and use it to enslave you. They use it to enslave us. They're supposed to use it to make we're supposed to use it to make life easier, to lift up the others who don't get it yet, so that they do someday get it. Instead, the people who nowadays get it or are illuminated, they're only illuminated because they've been let into a secret, and that secret is this is how you enslave other human beings. This is how you manipulate. This is how you propagate a society. Public plays were highly sponsored by the aristocratic class, but only the discerning few knew the esoteric message, while the majority received only literal interpretations. The opinions of the masses were shaped by the occult few, and this is an early example of social engineering and culture creation through drama. In Druidic mysteries, in ancient Britain, their magical power over people was unquestioned. I talk about this constantly. This is one of my very well-versed areas. Ancient Druidic mysteries. Okay, unquestioned, and we're in instances in which armies about to attack each other sheathed their swords when ordered to do so by the white-robed Druids. Their power was attributed to their deep understanding of nature, herbs, stone, and magnetism. Through the symbol of the oak tree, the Druids worshipped the supreme deity. There is an enduring legend of the battle between the Oak King and the god of light side of the year, and the Holy King, god of the dark side. These two mighty rulers fight for supremacy as the wheel of the year turns each season. In some Wiccan traditions, the Oak King and the Holy King are seen as dual aspects of the horned god, who is identified with Pan. Each of these twin aspects rules for half a year, battles for the favor of the goddess, and then retires to nurse his wounds for the next 6 months until it is time for him to reign once more. Harry Potter's wand is made of Hollywood and a phoenix feather, which is also a very important symbol to the occult elite. I gave Harry a wand made of Hollywood back in 1990 when I first drafted Chapter 6 of Philosopher's Stone. It was not an arbitrary decision. Holly has certain connotations that were perfect for Harry, particularly when contrasted with traditional associations of you, from which Voldemort's wand is made, J.K. Rowling. Thought to have supernatural powers, the holly tree has been a symbol of death and resurrection, eternal life and fertility, dating all the way back to Babylon. The wand itself is a symbol of will and also of the phallus. It is from this lore that Hollywood is named, and there is no doubt that Hollywood's film industry and most prolific culture creator on the planet today. Hollywood royalty. Today, the masses worship celebrities the way the ancients worshipped the gods. Many even make pilgrimages to the Holy Land in hopes to see their deities in the flesh. For some people, a life-changing movie such as Star Wars is the closest thing to a spiritual experience they'll ever have. You may have noticed how often we see celebrities and world leaders alike walking upon royal red carpets. Now, again, I got to interject. This is by design, by the way. This is by design. They drain every aspect of our lives from any spiritual connection, so that the only way we ever feel, if you're not someone's already in a tune or already spiritually connected, so that the only times we feel spiritually connected or some sort of spiritual epiphany is through the TV, is through some sort of media manipulation. And it's one that is steered and directed for a reason. This is why they drain us everywhere else. This is why I call it theme park culture. It's by design. It's so we never have our own epiphanies of our own true nature in this universe, of our own true reality. Nature is truly the teacher. When you interact with nature, when you're a kid, right? If you grow up, say, on a farm, you learn things. You learn about life, death, renewal, rebirth, and it teaches you deeper things about life. Things that we're not teaching our children that we should. When you tell your child that there is a Santa Claus, right? If you don't truly believe there's a Santa Claus as an adult, you shouldn't teach that to your child. Does that take the magic out of Christmas? No. You just don't understand what true magic is, so you don't know how to bring the true magic to your family. You're so used to this Hollywood steered idea of everything that you don't even know what it means to be magical. We shouldn't do this to our children. We shouldn't tell them these lies and get them used to lies, because guess what? Then someday we have to break that news that it was all a big gaffe and that's not real. And what do you think message that sends them in their subconscious mind? That heaven probably isn't real either. That God probably isn't real either. That the only thing real on this earth are going to be things that you can hear, see, taste, and touch with your only five senses. That is the true message. That is the goal. That is the agenda. They have done their job if that is the mind of a 15-year-old child. Everything in this world coming from these people is designed to break the human spirit, to snuff it out, to disconnect it, and reattach a demon, a false spirit, the counterfeit spirit, the demiurge, the fake God, the God who only has rule over material and no rule over spiritual, and we rule over spiritual. This is why they have to disconnect us. This is why Hollywood was created, was invented by black magicians who needed who reignited an ancient magic. It's the truth. The sooner you realize it, the sooner you'll wake up, and the sooner you'll be able to really see reality. Do you know what it's like to be one of very rare few to see true reality? So when you talk to people, you hear it in their voice that they don't see reality. You know it. You know it just by the way that they discuss things, their ideas about things. It's a burden. It's a heavy, heavy burden. It's a heavy burden. And I'm going to stop being honest about that. It's a heavy burden. It's a heavy burden, because at times you want to explode. But in the moment you want to explode, you also have to tell yourself they know nothing, they're ignorant. And at the same time, you have to have compassion and love. That's a heavy burden. And I do it. And I'm sure many of you do too. God bless you. Okay. So, moving on from that, I'm going to get into now the Babylonian gods and how this now correlates to our celebrities today. How kings should pass from gods to men. Understanding the paradigm of Hollywood royalty will take us all the way back to the beginning of civilization. Excuse me, I just need a sip of water, so just give me 2 seconds. Remember, you're listening to on the wakeupradio.com. This is Truth, Freedom, and Sophia. All right. So, understanding the paradigm of Hollywood royalty will take us all the way back to the beginning of civilization. Excavations of the earliest human settlements in Mesopotamia unearthed humble villages of reed huts and sun-dried mud houses that clustered near the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in 5000 BC. However, they went from mud huts to building ziggurats is a fantastic and not yet fully explored story of science. Sciences stranger than fiction. They inherited that knowledge. They inherited all of that. The leading deities of the Sumerian creation pantheon were sky gods Anu and earth goddess Ki and air god Enlil and water god Enki. Their power of creation, according to Sumerian theologians, was the divine word. Together with other gods, they were called the Anunnaki, which means princely offspring. And by the way, word, we're all trapped in this spell, in this mind field, through the word. Through the word. We are casting spells when we speak, and we don't even understand the weight of the words we speak when we speak to each other. And this is another thing we should teach our children young, right? If we teach our children young how we are actually responsible for each other, the words we speak out of our mouth carry a vibration. And if we teach them these things, like the principle of, if you know someone is upset about something or gets upset about something, without, doing it in a way that creates weakness, should we always do that thing to them just because we know it makes them upset? No, all the more you shouldn't do it. That will never help a person. But you know what we do nowadays is how sick our society creates us to be, is when we know something ticks someone off, or when we know something about someone emotionally, or we know something deep about something, Most of society uses it as a manipulation tool against the damn person. So now everybody walks around where they're always afraid to really show their true feelings or their true face because they're afraid it's going to be used against them in some way. It's really sad. Anyways, sorry, I got so off track. They believe man was fashioned from clay and created for a single purpose, to serve the gods by supplying them with food, drink, and shelter, so they might have leisure for their divine activities. In ancient Assyrian philosophy, creation was considered as a covenant between heaven and earth, as long as humans serve the gods until their death. Have you ever wondered why certain families of the world claim eminent rulership over the rest of humanity and make it their life's mission purpose to produce male heirs to the throne and keep their bloodlines pure? I'll tell you why. Because these people can only rule and only get ahead through deception. They need us. They can't tell us they need us because then that will give us the power. So they have to deceive us into thinking that we're slaves and we need them and we're nothing without them, so that we are hanging on their every word and that they have us controlled. It's all about mind control. They harness our supernatural life force energy, right? They harness it by making us think, or not us, but this is how they've operated, with the masses, by making people believe that they are the divine rulers, when in reality, the true divine rulers are the humans imbued with true spirit, with true source, with true God. And these outside entities created from the counterfeit spirit from Yaldabaoth, that false matrix, right? They have to harness us. They need us, and they can only survive and live and harness our energy through deception. All right, here is the fact that goes right over people's heads. Most of the world's royal families will trace their lineage back to supernatural ancestors. The Sumerian texts name 5 cities that were established before the Great Deluge. The records state their kingship was let down from heaven, meaning beings that early man considered gods ruled these city-states and were often at war with each other. Babylonian and Mesopotamian kings legitimized themselves to the fact that they came from ancient ruling families and emphasized that they came from the eternal seed, from the precious seed, dating from the time before the flood, and from families of primeval times. Now, I'm really on the fence about all the Sumerian history. Like, sometimes when I look into it, I have one kind of version in my head of how I see things went, and then sometimes I have totally another version of how I see things went. And interestingly enough, an experiment has been done to prove that when we observe or try to measure the past, or in some way pay attention to history, we actually change it. The double slit experiment actually proved this, because they did it, that they figured that through observation, if you observe something, it changes its behavior, and that even if you try to measure the behavior after it's already behaved, it still affects its behavior. So that means that you are observing something from the past, or are measuring something from the past, affects the past. So to me, I think that this is something to incorporate into this whole deception, that there is something to history and observing history and recognizing history. Are we actually rewriting history as we learn about history, as we consciously take in information and create a perception about our past? Is that rewriting it? Is that actually changing true history to reflect what the deceptors want? I feel like that's what's going on. I really do. The Sumerian goddess Inanna overshadowed and outlasted all of the gods of the time. She is the goddess with 1,000 names. She was worshipped in a great temple in Uruk along with the father of the gods. Inanna was the queen of heaven, both an awful and lovely goddess of love and war, sex and death. She played a greater role in myth, epic, and hymn than any other deity. Inanna is depicted as both a shy virgin and a sensuous mistress. She was a powerful warrior. Now, this is exactly a perfect example of the type of personality they want us all to take on, this occult Hollywood, mind control. They want us to believe this kind of dualistic perception about ourselves as humans, that we are inherently good and evil, that each person has in them a bad and a good side. This is somewhat true, but it's a perversion again, as they always invert everything so they can twist it and use it against you to enslave your mind. The true version of it is not how they use it. We all are born fulfilled in the spirit. And then coming into this life, we go through the gauntlet where they detach us from our spirit, right? It's punch after punch after punch after punch. In ancient times, the ancient tribes, if you wanted to get initiated into a tribe that you weren't born into, you had to run the gauntlet. So that means that all the tribal members, the men, lined up, and you had to allow each member to beat you, punch you, hit you, whatever. You were in the gauntlet. That's what they do to us when we're born. I swear, when we come into this fake matrix, this 3D reality, it's like we're running a gauntlet. And the gauntlet is to keep your spirit intact. And unfortunately, most people detach, they give up, they succumb. And they want us to believe that in us is this good and evil. But truly, it's not in us. It's what we choose to channel. We're good. We are inherently, fundamentally good. We are in nature when we are connected and truly fulfilled with our spirit. When we have the spirit in our bodies fully filled, we are good, but divine. We're divine, so we can't be anything but good. It's a positive. And when we are in our lower thinking, our 3D mind matrix, that's when we allow ourselves to then open ourselves and be channelers of negative, of darkness, of the lower entities, lower energies. But it's our choice. We're not like that in our nature. It's our choice. See, they don't want you to know it's about choice. Because if they say to you, these things are choices, then no person is going to consciously and no person going to consciously and accountably choose evil unless they're going to fully embody that, and that's what they are. So that's why they tell you about these choices. That's why they don't want you to come to those conclusions when you're very young, because when you observe nature and you learn certain things, you learn things like principles. They want you stuck in a law mindset. A person who is trapped in a law mindset is a slave. We're born in a slave mental matrix world where they enslave you first in your mind, and now they want to enslave us in our bodies. They want to utilize our bodies. They want our bodies to be vessels for demons. You think I'm joking or being funny about it or not? They want our bodies to be vessels for a darker realm, a spiritual realm that we're ignorant to because they've designed us to be ignorant to. If we knew about the spiritual realm, we would choose our own spirit every time. But because we're ignorant to the spiritual realm, I should not say we, because I am not ignorant at all to the spiritual realm. I'm ignorant to this realm, I'd say, more than that realm. But when I say we, I mean the masses, the general population. That you come in as a slave. You're a mental slave because you're under a law set of mind, not a principled state of mind. A principled state of mind operates in integrity. You operate according to certain principles. You don't have to have laws, because if you're operating according to certain principles, laws are arbitrary because you don't need them, because you're going to be good. You're going to be doing things based on those principles. The laws are law, and I know this is not me saying I'm an anarchist or I don't think we need laws right now in society. Clearly we do, because we're not living in a world where people are living a principled life. So don't think I'm saying that and trying to apply it to today's society. I am not. Hopefully we'll get there soon, and I think we will. But the laws are to keep you in that slave state of mind, to make you feel like you need a superior. You need the laws, because without the laws, you won't know how to run your life. So you get it. It's to get you trained in your brain to know that without someone directing you and giving you direction and laws, you'll be in chaos. That's what they want you to believe, so that you're in fear. You're in fear that to not trust yourself ever, not trust your own mind. So going on. Clay tablets reveal that Sumerian people were contentious and pragmatic, valuing wealth, power, and personal freedom. The Sumerians loved civilization more than Carrie Bradshaw loves NYC. Inanna's strongest cults were in cities most notable for trade, such as Phoenicia. They despised the wilderness, important fact, and their definition of wicked was an uncivilized person who lived in the mountains and didn't practice agriculture. Well, guess what? I would be wicked. I would be considered evil and wicked according to these people, because my ideal life would be living in the mountains or the woods, off of nature. So they would hate me, these people. In fact, it was an honor itself was the most responsible for civilization as we know it in the first place. This just kind of goes through that and that and that. And now we'll go into Hollywood and how Hollywood is the modern day Babylon. Hollywood has been associated with ancient Babylon since its inception. During the onset of the Great Depression, many Americans believed that the country's financial hardships were the result of its moral decline. A large part of the blame was focused on Hollywood, which they called Babylon Sin City. No ancient city is more famous for its mysteries than Babylon, whose name literally means Gate of the Gods. Ruins lie in modern-day Iraq, 59 miles southwest of Baghdad, located in the lands of biblical Garden of Eden. The cradle of civilization was no more than a dusty, forgotten mound of debris and brick until 1808. This is where this ancient black magic got revived and revised. When a British Aquarian scholar named Claudius James Reich took up a diplomatic post in the extremely remote city of Baghdad. He was only 22 at the time, but through his skillful diplomacy, he and his wife literally held court in the city. In the 19th century was a golden age for archaeologists, when many of the treasures of the world's ancient and lost civilizations were rediscovered. The desolation of Mesopotamia struck every archaeologist to the region as there was no life for miles around. The modern discovery of these biblical cities in this state was a dramatic confirmation of the prediction of Old Testament prophets like Zephaniah, who preached that the city of Nineveh would be made into a desert. Babylon was very much like a Los Angeles of the ancient world. As an important center of popular culture, it is not surprising that Babylonian star chart is central in so many ancient and modern peoples' magical practices. In ancient times, the ziggurat of Entemenenki towered over the city and was dedicated to the god Marduk. From the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian epic of creation, we learn how Marduk became the chief god when he slayed the dragon of chaos, Tiamat. Eventually, the people would simply call him Bel, which means Lord, because his real name was considered too holy to be pronounced. During the height of the Babylonian Empire, the New Year's Akatu festival differed from the earlier Sumerian instead of the king receiving his blessing from Inanna in reenactment of her sacred marriage to Dumuzi, the main focus was submission of the king of Babylon before Marduk. In this festival, the god of the earth ascends into the summit of the holy mountain to join with the sky in a ceremonial recapitulation of the story of creation. On the first day of the 12-day ceremony, the priests of Marduk would emerge. Isn't that interesting? The 12 Days of Christmas song. This is all of our holidays. The Roman Catholic Church, okay, I gotta say this, I gotta interject. The Roman Catholic Church, and this is not me saying discrediting Christianity, but the Roman Catholic Church is an ancient Babylonian cult to Mithras. And I've been saying this for years. I've done videos exposing how and why. It is not the real story of Christ the way they present it. They are they practice ancient Babylonian ritual stuff. It's not the true story of Jesus when they present it. All of our holidays are based on these occult holidays. So anyways, on the first day of the 12-day ceremony, the priests of Marduk would emerge from the shrine reciting sad prayers, and the people would answer with equally sad prayers expressing humanity's fear of the unknown. This fear explains why the high priest would heed to the Asarya every day, asking for Marduk's forgiveness, begging him to protect his holy city, and asking him to have favor on them. This prayer, they say, was called the Secret of Asarya. The Enuma Elish is one of the oldest stories concerning the birth of the gods and the creation of the universe and human beings. It explains how all the gods united in the god Marduk, following his victory over Tiamat. The recitation of this epic was considered the beginning of preparations for the submission of King of Babylon before Marduk. See, if the king is submissive to Marduk, then the people are going to be submissive to the king. It's all a psyop. It's a psyop. The king would enter into the Asarya accompanied by priests. They would approach the altar where the high priest impersonates Marduk. He would strip the king of his jewelry, scepter, and crown and slap him hard while the king knelt and began to pray, asking Marduk's forgiveness and submitting to him. The removal of all worldliness possessions is a symbol of this. Then the king stood up, and the priest would return his jewelry, scepter, and crown. The priest would then slap him hard again, hoping for the king to shed tears, because that would express more submission, and more respect to his power. When the priest returns the crown to the king, that means his power was renewed by Marduk. Thus, April would be considered not only the revival of nature and life, but also the state as well. These ceremonies reflected the belief that force of arms confers the rule and mandate. After the several-day-long public reenactments of Marduk's trials, on the 10th day was his marriage to the goddess Ishtar, who is also called Sarpanit. At this point, on this day, the statues of gods were arranged around a huge table for a feast. Marduk celebrated his marriage to Ishtar, where earth and heaven are united. They believed in this day the order of the heavens made contact with the order of the earth, and the energy released by their union drove the wheel of creation around its axis for another cycle. In ceremonial identification with Marduk, the king celebrated mystical marriage by joining in sexual union with high priestess of Asaya. In her role of goddess Ishtar, they would also both sit at the throne before the population and recite special poems for the occasion. The Kodak Theater opened in 2001 in the heart of downtown Hollywood and is the permanent home of the Academy Awards. This is where Hollywood royalty parades down the red carpet on their way to receiving their Oscars. The Oscar itself bears a very strong resemblance to Ptah, the god of craftsmen or masons. Adjacent to theater is Hollywood and Highlands Center called the Babylonian Courtyard. Its decor is taken from the 1916 movie Intolerance by Freemason D.W. Griffith. The ancient Babylonian story in the movie depicts the conflict between Prince Belshazzar of Babylon and Cyrus of Great Persia. In the film, the intolerant priests of Bel-Marduk attempt to suppress the worship of Ishtar and betray the king and the city of the Persians to the Persians. In the Babylon courtyard, four-story columns topped with standing elephants around an archway that frames the famous Hollywood sign in the distant hills on either side of the arch are two curious characters. The figures on the left holding the basin of water, similar to the winged genie of Assyrian iconography. They appear in the reliefs of the walls and throughout the temples and palaces in a wide variety of ways. These genii have been interpreted as beings known as Apkulus. In Akkadian, they were beings that existed during godlike generation of humanity and were closely associated with the god Enki, a created god, one of the Anunnaki, and Marduk's father. Enki is also known as Ea and is usually distinguished from other gods by streams of water erupting from his body or from a pot held in his hands. All cultural achievements, be they in architecture, writing, goldsmithing, or carpentry, were regarded as revelations from Ea, who was thought to have given them to humans at the beginning of time. In Sumerian texts, Enki appears as a benign peacemaker, but not always a reliable deity, for enjoyed tricks and subterfuges and was not devoid of malice. He was the god of running waters, and his seeds of life were symbolized on the clay tablets by the bucket that he holds very often in his hand. And this just goes on to describe different features of Los Angeles and Hollywood that mimic exactly Babylonian ziggurats and temples. Now I'm going to get into the sorcerers of Hollywood. I just wanted to give you guys the history and the background so that you understand and then you have reference points to then do your own research. Obviously, I don't have time. I would have to literally dedicate a 10-part series and do each part dedicated to a specific topic because I could go on for 2 hours just about the ancient plays and how they were used in ancient times to propagate the minds of the masses, you know, to drive certain ideas, to create certain epiphanies, etc., etc. I could go on for a long time of just about that. But anyways, here's the good stuff, and this is probably what everyone really likes to hear. The sorcerers of Hollywood, Babylon. Oh, let me read this little quote. Now ye shall know that chosen priest and apostle of infinite space is the prince priest, the beast. And in his woman called the scarlet woman is all power given. They shall gather my children into their fold. They shall bring the glory of the stars into the hearts of men. I think that's Aleister Crowley who said that. Weirdo. The sorcerers of Hollywood and Babylon. If it only takes 6 degrees to get to Kevin Bacon in Hollywood, it takes even less to get to Aleister Crowley. The Lama is the hidden religion of the 20th century in Hollywood. It is the epicenter for global sorcery and mind control. Behind the Hollywood Highland complex, there is a mansion nestled on the hills that can only be visited by invitation. This is true, guys. The Magic Castle. located at 7001 Franklin Avenue, is a nightclub for magicians and magic enthusiasts, as well as the clubhouse for the Academy of Magical Arts. It bills itself as the most unusual private club in the world. The lobby of the castle has no visible doors to the interior, and visitors must say the secret password of Open Sesame to a sculpture of an owl with glowing red eyes to gain access to the entrance of the club, meaning it's got voice recognition. Movies are magical ceremonies, and their mode of operation is mimicry or sympathy. Some directors know exactly the potent magic power of movies and use it to enlighten or enslave. Depending on the makers, 2 hours in front of a screen watching a movie like The Matrix should sufficiently initiate even the most naive person to the level of the first degree of occult apprentice if they realize what they are watching. In 1959, occultist filmmaker Kenneth Anger published an underground classic book in French called Hollywood Babylon. It was an expose of Hollywood's uglier side, detailing murders, suicides, drugs, sex, and all manner of Tinseltown scandals. He used the image of D.W. Griffith's crumbling Babylonian set from Intolerance to establish the golden age of Hollywood as a decadent pagan fleshpot. The book opens with the quote from Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law: "Every man and woman is a star." Anger was a student of Thelema. Since high school and throughout his career, was connected to many Hollywood insiders and practitioners of the occult, such as Anton LaVey, the Manson family, and famous OTO members, Ordo Templi Orientis. That is the another secret society of magicians, magi, black magicians, Ordo Templi Orientis. Kenneth Anger, I think Jay-Z is a member of OTO, actually. Kenneth Anger was raised on the Oz books. His biographer, Bill Landis, writes that the Wizard of Oz books laid the groundwork for his attraction to Crowley. In 1955, he traveled to Cefalo, Sicily, to the site of Crowley's Abbey of Thelema. Thelema is a religion that occult religion they practice in Hollywood. It's a literal magical religion. With the intention of doing a documentary on the location. Anger's film titles include Invocation of My Demon Brother, Lucifer Rising, and Inauguration of Pleasure Dome starring Jack Parsons' wife and former Scarlet Woman Marjorie Cameron. One movie of his that was never completed was named Ishtar, about the Babylonian goddess returning to Earth, starring Mick Jagger. Anger's close friend Mel Burkrant has the world's largest private collection of Mickey Mouse memorabilia, and in 2005, Anger made a short film about it called Mouse Heaven. Aleister Crowley's religion of Thelema is the secret doctrine of the 20th century. The motto of "Do What Thou Wilt" is the anthem of the music industry, if you listen closely. Although Crowley died nearly penniless and fighting a heroin addiction, his legacy is nevertheless nothing short of colossal. Scientology rules in Hollywood and was created by L. Ron Hubbard, a protege of Crowley, who took hypnosis and black magic and made it into a long, drawn-out, and expensive torture session. Scientology would not be nearly as successful as it is today without its celebrity endorsements. Recently, the Church of Scientology and Tom Cruise announced plans to take on major movie studios and TV networks with the creation of Scientology Media Productions. Photos reveal a set is being built on a triangle-shaped plot of land that spans about 5 acres on Sunset Boulevard. The $50 million studios are big enough to rival major Hollywood sets, and the church boasts its network will reach everyone on Earth. Oh, I hope not. Those people are so sick and twisted. Like they said, it's you pay for your own torture. It's so crazy. The new studio will also be used to make propaganda movies to recruit more followers. Cruise himself is set to film all his forthcoming Hollywood blockbusters at the base. It is believed that the structure is being built by workers who are being paid just 50 cents an hour. I believe it. One self-proclaimed purpose of Crowley's system of magic was to put oneself in touch with their holy guardian angel. See, this is where I say they disembody us spiritually, and this is what the wax scene's all about, disembodying your soul, right? So that they can fuse a guardian angel, aka demon, to you as a false counterfeit spirit. Holy guardian angel. In magic, with the CK, in theory and practice, Crowley clearly defines the identity of his personal guardian angel. And he says, quote, "The devil is historically the god of any people that one personally dislikes." This had led to so much confusion of thought that the beast 666 has preferred to let names stand as they are and proclaim simply that I was the solar phallichromatic Lucifer is his own holy guardian angel, and the devil, Satan, or Hadit, of our particular unit of starry universe. This serpent Satan is not the enemy of man, but he who made gods of our race, knowing good and evil. He bade know thyself and taught initiation. He is the devil of the book of thought. He and his emblem is Baphomet, the androgyne, who is the hieroglyph of arcane perfection. See where all this trans stuff is going? Crowley also later identified Aiwass as magical current of solar phallic energy worshipped by the Sumerians as Shaitan, a devil god, and by Egyptians as Set. By the way, phallic means penis, means male sex energy. That's just in case you don't know that. Crowley wrote that it was the task of the OTO, Ordo Temple Orientis, to restore Christianity to its real status as a solar phallic religion. This is what I was explaining about the Roman Catholic Church. It's truly the solar phallic religion. It is a mimic. It is the solar phallic religion. They have succeeded through the Roman Catholic Church with doing this. It's really disturbing. Sorry. Okay. In the religion of Thelema, it is believed that the history of humanity can be divided into a series of aeons, each of which was accompanied by its own forms of magical and religious expression. The Book of the Law is divided into 3 sections, each of which describes a different aeon. The first of these was the Aeon of Isis, which occurred during prehistory when mankind worshipped the great goddess, symbolized by the Egyptian Isis. This was followed by the Aeon of Osiris, a period that took place in the classical and medieval times, when humanity worshipped a singular male god, symbolized by the Egyptian god Osiris, and was dominated by patriarchal values. The book says that in 1904, humanity entered into the 3rd Aeon, the Aeon of Horus, which was controlled by the child god, Horus. In the Aeon of Horus, there is no such thing as sin. Sorry, I didn't realize that pause. In the Aeon of Horus, there is no such thing as sin. Even the very idea of something being sinful is a lie and an obstacle to self-fulfillment. Instead, each person will be governed by their own self-will and self-interest. The feminine counterpart to Horus is Scarlet Woman or Babylon. Aleister Crowley was very sexist and held to all the misogynist notions of the Victorian era. He was struggling against extensive repression and never really treated women as anything but sexual playthings. And he wanted them to behave like nymphomaniacs. He occasionally declares in his writings that he had fallen in love, but none of his relationships with women involved what would normally be described as love. Women aroused in him a crude desire to assert his masculinity by penetrating them, which brought him a triumphant sense of violation. He only ever used a woman in his life for sex, money, or both. Most of the women who got involved with him ended up mentally ill and suffering from drug addiction. His first wife, Rose Kelly, whom the Book of the Law was channeled through, later spent time in mental hospitals. Crowley's last wife, Maria de Marmara, was committed to the same asylum. Colney Hatch and died there. I want to say this is what they do to women and to people and celebrities in general. Once they harness what they need from you, once they drain you of what they need from you, your life force, your psychic energy, because women are naturally more in tune psychically. No, that doesn't mean that every woman is going to be more psychic than every man. No, I'm not saying that. But women have a natural attunement to psychic energy, and they harness that from us. That's why they use us as for sex goddesses. So they create this whole thing in Hollywood, right? They get the celebrity to think of themselves as a deity, as a channel for a deity, and they really raise these celebrities and these cults to train them to believe this, that they are doing the God's work and it's Lucifer's work, and they know that it's Lucifer. They know it's the devil. They are openly okay with that because how it's presented to them, how things are presented to their minds when they're young. This is why we see a lot of them die of drug overdose by age 27. They call it the curse of the age 27. Or if they make it past age 27, the ones that are heavily involved in this occult life, this, this cult lifestyle that are used for these magical rituals, because these celebrities are clearly natural witches or natural psychics. And what they do is, when we go to a concert, when we worship that celebrity, even just from our own home or from afar, we're giving an energy to them. Just like when you spend your money is a good measurement of what you value, right? What you spend your money on is going to be a good indicator of what you value. I'm sorry, my transmission just paused, so please forgive me. I want to save my video. What the heck? It just kicked me off. You guys believe this? This is what happens to me. I get kicked off, and then they delete my video. Okay, we're back. All right, we're back with On the Wake Up Radio. This is Truth, Freedom, and Sophia. I'm constantly getting kicked off Facebook, Instagram, and actually they just kicked me off and then deleted my video on me, so I couldn't even save that whole that whole first part of the segment that I just did. So to all you guys who are watching live, thank you. The video's gone, but it'll be saved on the way through On the Wake Up Radio, and I'll be able to share it. So make sure to catch the replay. So going on, the Lamanites called their goddess Babylon, the mother of abominations, the woman, mystery, Babylon the Great, from a scene in the book of Revelations, was a source of much inspiration in Crowley's cosmology. Her god form is that of the sacred whore, and her primary symbol is the chalice, or granat ral. And Liber Chet Velvelum Abigni sub Fuguru CLVI, a text centered on the figure of Babylon, we encounter Crowley's using the symbolism to discuss a kind of sexual magic in the curriculum of AA. The exempt adept was to master. Briefly, this act involved sex during menstruation and the consumption of menstrual blood. Seriously. They believed that Babylon could be invoked to Earth, and her role could be fulfilled by actual women, as a counterpart to her own identification as the Great Beast. This is what I was just explaining about 2 minutes ago. And their duty was then to help manifest the energies of the current Aeon of Horus. Aleister Crowley believed that many of his lovers were playing this cosmic role, even to the point of fulfilling prophecy. Many modern Thelemites believe that this essential form of the Scarlet Woman was, well as the beast, can be fulfilled by any magician who so chooses. Crowley actually branded his Scarlet Woman in the chest with a hot iron, with his mark of the beast, the circle, and a cross. You notice a lot of that. There's a lot of that. This was the circle and the cross. There it is. The Enuma Elish describes how Marduk becomes the hero of all gods after defeating the elemental forces of chaos. The final act of Marduk's creation of the world from Tiamat's body is to seal the primordial deep and create his temple as the center of the world. We have to say that, this is actually true. This is where all of this order out of chaos comes from, right? Their whole motto, order out of chaos. Satan, Lucifer, Satan, the devil, the negative entities, negative counterfeit spirit on this earth that seeks to control and enslave us, right? Has to restore order, has to create an order so that he's at the top. So hierarchies are solely created only so Lucifer can be at the top. That's why these secret societies are obsessed with hierarchies. They're obsessed with order, having people in their place. That's why they need this new socialism, this new communism, this global communism, this globalism. That's what this is all about. It's putting everybody and locking them in their place in the hierarchy. Because if there's a hierarchy, no one will ever go above Lucifer. Because remember, Lucifer, Satan, he saw himself as equal to God, wanted to be worshipped as much as God, wanted the same exact amount of love, if we're going to go with the main storyline here, as God, wanted to be worshipped as God. But God, he faltered to realize that God imbued him with all of those things. And then when he was cast down, he was cast out of the spiritual realm, no more access to the spiritual realm. And because not created as a human being, which we have spirit in us, in which, if you read the Nag Hammadi text, explains the creation story in much more detail, with much more accuracy, and you really see how the scheme against humanity really started where it began. It began at our creation. We were created for the sole purpose of Lucifer, capturing God, spirit, and woman so that he could dominate spirit. It's just incredible. So when you read those creation stories, they give you such a deeper layer, and you see such you see such deep parallels to what we're living through now, to almost what was happening in the beginning of time. Because time is pretty much irrelevant. Time is another construction of the matrix, of negative entities, of this Lucifer character. I hate going with traditional names for things, but we'll do it for the sake of doing it, for the sake of keeping things clean. That's how he operates. He has to create a new order because he has to be at the top. Because if we're all doing our own thing, right, we're all living, operating, connected truly to spirit, to source on our own without anyone dictating what to us, we'll have a true human experience. That's what a true human experience is. Do you know none of us are living right now? Not one person walking on this planet. I mean, I can't say that because I don't know. But I'll say a majority of people on this planet, we're not truly living. Because we're born, we come into the world, we're downloaded a worldview into us, a belief system into us, we're indoctrinated right away. We're told what to believe. We're told how the world works. We're told what happens to us. Most of what we do is told to us and downloaded to us through someone else. It's not a natural, organic experience, right? And that's the only way this matrix stays afloat. That's the only way this illusion stays solid. That's the only way the veil keeps itself intact, is through indoctrinating us right from when we're born, making sure they download that perception into us. So that perception is the first seed, and they just keep, planting more seeds. And if you can disconnect from that matrix and you go to the organic, to yourself, and you go off of natural interactions and experiences, the conclusions you come to about life are very different. They just are. They're very different. Very different. So Crowley, all basically of what happens in Hollywood is this religion that Aleister Crowley reinvented when he started studying the ancient Babylonian religions, the mystery religions. And we have to say, right, you will know them by their fruits. That is one of the strongest statements I ever took from the Bible, because it's true. You will know them by their fruits. What people produce, what people are, the things that they produce says everything about them, right? Aleister Crowley, do you think he had a wholesome, righteous, truly from God religion? Would he have died a heroin addict, a sex addict, a depraved animal? No. The proof is in the pudding, right? Same thing with governments, right? With all of these religions. If any of these religions were true religions, they would be speaking for themselves. We would know it. It would be revealed that they were the true religion. We wouldn't be all sitting here arguing about it. Holy wars wouldn't be happening. All these ridiculous things that have happened in the name of God would never happen. But they do happen. And they happen by design, to keep us in conflict so that we're never, ever given a moment of real, true peace to connect. They need the chaos constant chaos in here, order out here, right? If there's order in here, it might look chaotic out here to them. because they need the chaos in here so they can keep you in order physically. See, it's all about compartmentalization. If they can get you from a young age to dissociate, right? To dissociate when you're in situations you don't like, that right there is constructing and directing you to learning the ways of their world, right? To dissociate and do things that you don't want to do to make others happy or to get a reward, right? It's all about this reward and fear and dissociation, compartmentalization. They can get you to compartmentalize your own wants, needs, and desires, your own true self, your own true personality, then they can control you by putting certain drives and certain roadblocks in your personality, and you set them up. You do it to yourself because they steer a worldview into you. They teach you to compartmentalize, to dissociate, which is an actual mental illness that they're drilling into us, dissociative disorder. We all live to some degree on that level. If you go to a job every day that you hate, you have some version of dissociative disorder. And it's by design. It's because they want us to be slaves. Modern day slavery. The Earth Chronicles is a series of books by scholar of Mesopotamian culture, Zechariah Sitchin. I have one of his books. They were giants upon the earth. It's really interesting. Although he's a reptilian, so we know that the information that he chronicled or interpreted also has an agenda behind it. So we can't take it and say this is all true. We have to, again, you have to have discernment so that when you interact with information, you learn how to interact with information. I wish they taught us that when we were young, how to interact with information, because this is why people are idiots and argue and are ignorant, right? It's because they don't know how to interact with information. So they interact with information like this. It's information I want to hear, I keep it. If it's information I don't want to hear, I don't keep it. I don't interact with it, right? That's how most people engage in information. But if you are taught from a young age the true way to interact with information, you'll learn true discernment, because you'll learn that all information, all is important, and you take things from all information and you see the truth and you see the common thread in all information, and you base things off of the things you already know, and you pull out the things that align with what you already know or what makes sense to you or what aligns with your higher self, etc., etc. You get what I'm trying to say. So back to Zechariah Sitchin, who explains how the Anunnaki of the Sumerians were actually ancient aliens who came to Earth to genetically engineer a slave race to mine for precious metals and other resources. Although his works are considered controversial, there is no denying that slavery has been a part of civilization since the very beginning. In 1983, Saddam Hussein, who considered himself a reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, began rebuilding Babylon. He installed a portrait of himself and Nebuchadnezzar at the entrance to the ruins and reinforced the processional way. Hussein inscribed his name on many of the bricks in imitation of Nebuchadnezzar. Through art and artifacts, the ancient kings revealed themselves to be militant, pompous, imperialists, who thought nothing of deporting entire tribes or torturing prisoners of war to build their kingdoms. Bas reliefs of cities of Nimrod and Nineveh feature strutting kings conquering armies and platoons of deities. Line after line of cuneiform praises the royals in extravagant terms. King Sennacherib boasted on the walls of his palace without a rival in Nineveh. Quote, people from enemy towns and men from remote mountain regions, which I have conquered, worked with iron picks and sledgehammers and quarried limestone for the construction of my palace. This enormous structure was finely sculpted with reliefs depicting Sennacherib's military campaigns and hundreds of unfortunate prisoners. The king gloated, quote, I deported them and made them carry the head and pad and mold bricks. There is no doubt that Ashur-nasir-pal too ruled through the strength of arms. So they just describe how cruel and boastful he was of his enslavement of people, and how disgusting that is, and how that is part of how our ruling elite today want to be perceived and ruled. Now, the next section I'm going to get into, and I'm going to end after this little bit, is with Britney Spears coming forward and trying to get conservatorship over, get control over herself again and end her conservatorship. It's important that we do recognize that these people are victims. They're victims. Their parents sell them to the system when they're young children, and they give free reign for these Hollywood producers, execs to do whatever they need to do to get this child to be a star. There's something in these children that they see, that they pick out very young, and then they get the child's parents to sell them basically over for celebrity and stardom and money and fame. So there is a global underground network of dark occultists who use various methods of trauma to create compartmentalized, mind-controlled slaves. Key people in government, business, religion, education system, the medical profession, the military professional, sports, the media, and Hollywood are under mind control and are also the perpetrators of it. Every person on the planet has become a slave by proxy through the system. Through the entertainment industry, the trauma is spread to the masses. And it is at this point where we focus our attention. I'm going to end that for a second. Okay, and then I'm going to just pop on Facebook real quick. All right. Welcome to this live stream, everyone. This is Freedom and Sophia with On the Wake Up Radio. I've already been on air for over an hour now, and this is the tail end of the episode. So I thought I'd go on Facebook Live and share the end and maybe get some people more interested in watching more episodes. So I'm discussing Hollywood mind control and the history of the occult religion that runs Hollywood and how they harness our life force energy through rituals, through black magic rituals, and they use celebrities who are mind controlled to also mind control the masses. And we have to just start realizing this so that we can teach our children to recognize these things and be better. It's not about saying this is happening, never interact. It's about knowing, discerning, and teaching the younger generations to be better, to be smarter, to apply this wisdom, not just know these things, but to apply it. So I want to start by saying there is a global underground network of dark occultists who use various methods of trauma to create compartmentalized, mind-controlled slaves. Key people in government, business, religion, education systems, the medical profession, the military, professional sports, the media, and Hollywood are under mind control and are also the perpetrators of it. Every person on the planet has become a slave by proxy through this system. Through the entertainment industry, the trauma is spread to the masses, and it is this point where we focus our attention, because this is the point where now it is life or death. Right now it is life or death. Do we want to be mind-controlled slaves, or do we want to be a true human? Do we want to be a free humanity? I know what my answer is. Slavery is alive in Hollywood, and many stars are extinguished on the path of global enslavement. We are all victims of trauma-based mind control to varying degrees. The rich, powerful, and famous are worst off. Their opulence and degenerative behavior is promoted in the tabloids so that we can worship and envy their lifestyles, never knowing that they are in absolute servitude, physically and spiritually. Generating dissatisfaction in life for normal people is part of their psychological warfare. If you want the things they show you in lifestyles of the rich and famous, you must first become their slave. The trauma that stars endure can be seen in their art, and it trickles down to traumatize everyone by proximity. For millennia, warfare has taken place, and men have experienced post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is a mentally debilitating effect of trauma. And intrusive flashbacks of events will often occur if the brain doesn't protect itself from reminders. And any traumatic event could create a certain shatteredness within the victim. The human brain has a natural defense mechanism that compartmentalizes cases of extreme trauma. The mind creates an amnesiac barrier around the event so that the person can go on leading a somewhat normal life and not have to relive the horrible experience. The methods for exploiting this ability of the brain were perfected in the concentration camps of Nazi Germany. After the Second World War, the emphasis changed from control of physical territory to control of minds, emotions, and finances, which are foundations for control of the entire race. Nazi scientists learned that if you could systematically traumatize someone, starting particularly with children under the age of 5, you could shatter a person's mind into a honeycomb of self-contained compartments. Then they use techniques to access the different sections of the brain while the subject is hypnotized. These various compartments, unaware of the other's existence, can be programmed like a computer to carry out tasks. Using trigger words like hypnotic keys, sounds, or signals, these alternate personalities can be pulled to the front or pushed back according to the will of the programmer. One self-contained fragment of mind becomes a person's core or front personality. On the conscious level, it is returned to the subconscious when another compartment is accessed. After the victim has performed a task, they forget what they have done. Entire systems can be embedded into a person's mind, each with its own theme, access codes, and trigger words. Their closest friends won't even realize who they know is the only one compartment of their mind. This has become known as multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, DID, where different dissociative parts of a single brain view themselves as separate persons. What is an actor but a person who specializes in multiple personalities and deliberately invokes an alien presence into their consciousness? Today, if artists want to make it or have their work shared with the rest of the world, there are many gatekeepers and processes in dark initiation that they must pass through. Many times, artists of their work spell out exactly what they must go through in the name of fame. In her 13-minute music video, Marry the Night, Lady Gaga explains in an artistic way the trauma she is made to endure to become a superstar. In the beginning, Gaga delivers a monologue that defines the plight of a mind-control victim. While lying on a stretcher that is pushed by 2 nurses, she describes the way she perceives reality, and only one by escaping into her own world is she able to go on. The creepy nurse that attends to Gaga after her trauma session says, "I remember when I delivered you," a clue about how slaves are conditioned from birth inside the circle of friends and family. It's so true. So true. When the camera pans out, it shows that Gaga is not alone. She is in a ward filled with victims going through the same conditioning. In the video, the transformation from the real Stephanie to her altered Lady Gaga is symbolized by dyeing her hair dark blonde. Ritual abuse survivor and former Mother of Darkness Arizona Wilder explains that the dark occultists prefer their ritual goddess blonde. In the context of the video, the expression "marry the night" takes on the metaphysical meaning. Marriage is a binding religious ritual, which I explain is what happened when Britney Spears shaved her head. She was married, she was creating she was doing a ritual, some sort of marriage ritual, whether it's to the cult or whatnot, who knows, but these people, man, totally programmed. They have their brain, their identities isolated. It's really sad. They go through a gauntlet. A talk Lady Gaga gave at Yale for the Emotional Revolution Summit in 2015 sparked alternative researchers to wonder if she was beginning to break her programming. Its focus was on expressive emotions, the sadness and depression that young people are experiencing, and her feelings that no one is listening. Gaga said she curated her life to be an expression of her pain, to overcome her depression. She says she's been taking prescription medication for it, and when she tries to stop, her doctors tell her not to. Listen, Lady Gaga loves this shit. She is a high witch. Many times it's been spilled that, maids who've left her hotel rooms had to clean bathtubs filled with blood. Real disgusting shit. So she loves it. She loves it. She's a victim, but she also is a perpetrator. Project Monarch. The primary symbol of mind control in popular culture is the monarch butterfly. The word monarch is not only defined within the context of royal nobility or the government project, but also refers to the feeling a person gets when they are undergoing trauma induced by electric shock. A feeling of being lightheaded is reported, as if floating or fluttering above their body like a butterfly. There is also the symbolic representation of the transformation or metamorphosis from one creature to another. Pay attention to the infinite number of times a young celebrity is pictured in butterfly motif. I just had to end that because of you. I can't. Sorry, Cindy. When you edit this, please know that I had a child come in the room, and the material is too dark to discuss in front of the child. So um, you're listening to Truth, Freedom, and Sophia. Thanks for watching, and thanks for tuning in to onthewakeupradio.com. We'll see you next week.